What if I told you that becoming someone people can't stop thinking about isn't about being the most attractive, the funniest, or the most successful person in the room? What if the secret to becoming magnetic has nothing to do with changing who you are and everything to do with understanding a hidden psychological framework that most people will never discover? Today, I'm going to walk you through the exact psychology behind why certain people become absolutely unforgettable while others fade into the background. And before we dive deep into this, if you find value in what I'm about to share, hit that like button and subscribe because I share psychology-backed strategies like this every single week that can transform how you connect with people. Here's what most people don't understand. There's a massive difference between someone who merely likes you and someone who genuinely thinks about you when you're not around. Someone who likes you might enjoy your company, but someone who's magnetically drawn to you, they anticipate your messages, they replay your conversations, they find reasons to be near you. And the beautiful truth is that creating this level of connection isn't manipulation when done ethically. It's simply understanding human psychology at a deeper level than most people ever will. Now, let me be transparent with you from the start. What I'm about to teach you is powerful. You could use these insights to build genuine, deep connections that enrich both your life and others. Or you could use them to manipulate people for selfish gain. I'm giving you a scalpel, not a weapon. How you use it reflects your character, not mine. I'm simply here to illuminate how human psychology actually works beneath the surface, the foundation. Understanding psychological gravity. Think of human connection like gravity. Some people create a weak gravitational pull. You enjoy their presence, but you don't orbit around them. Others create such a strong gravity that you find yourself pulled into their world almost involuntarily. The difference isn't random. It's based on a psychological principle I call need recognition and fulfillment. Every single person you meet is walking around with unmet psychological needs. These aren't always obvious. In fact, most people aren't even consciously aware of what they're desperately seeking. But these needs create psychological gaps, empty spaces in their emotional landscape that they're subconsciously hoping someone will fill. When you learn to identify these gaps and genuinely fill them, something remarkable happens. You don't just become someone they like, you become someone they need. And that's when you transition from being forgettable to being magnetic. The art of recognition. Reading behavioral signatures. Before we can fill someone's psychological needs, we have to identify what those needs actually are. And this is where most people completely miss the mark. They treat everyone the same, using generic social strategies that create generic results. Imagine you're having a conversation with someone. Most of the time, the interaction follows a predictable rhythm. Their voice maintains a certain tone, their energy level stays relatively consistent, their engagement remains steady. This is what I call their baseline, their normal operating frequency. But pay close attention, because occasionally something different happens. Suddenly, their voice rises with unexpected enthusiasm. Their eyes light up in a way they hadn't before. They lean in closer. They speak faster. Or, conversely, they might become unusually quiet, their energy dropping noticeably. These moments, these deviations from their baseline, are like psychological breadcrumbs leading you directly to their core needs. I call these moments emotional signatures, and learning to spot them is like developing a superpower in social dynamics. When you see someone's emotional signature activate, you've found a direct pathway to what matters most to them. You've discovered where their psychological gaps exist. But here's the critical part that most people miss. It's not just about noticing when someone gets excited or emotional. You need to pay attention to what specifically triggered that response. Was it when they talked about an achievement? Was it when they expressed a fear? Was it when they mentioned a relationship? The trigger tells you everything about their underlying need. Let me give you a real example. I once noticed a colleague who maintained a very even-keeled demeanor in most conversations, but whenever the topic shifted to his weekend projects, specifically his woodworking, his entire energy changed. He'd speak with his hands more, his pace would quicken, he'd share intricate details he normally wouldn't bother with. That signature told me something important. This person had a deep need for his skills to be recognized and appreciated in a world where his day job made him feel invisible. Once I recognized this, I didn't just compliment his woodworking. Instead, I asked him specific questions that let him showcase his expertise. I brought up problems he could solve. I created opportunities for him to feel valued for this skill he'd developed. Within weeks, I noticed he'd seek out my company specifically, often going out of his way to continue our conversations. I hadn't manipulated him. I'd simply recognized and genuinely appreciated something real about him that others overlooked: the 4 core psychological needs. Through years of studying social dynamics and human behavior, I've identified 4 primary psychological needs that drive most of human connection. Almost everyone has all 4 to some degree, but typically 1 or 2 dominate their psychological landscape. When you identify which needs are strongest in someone, you hold the blueprint for creating a deep, lasting connection. Need 1, the hunger for significance. Some people have an overwhelming need to feel special, important, and valued. This isn't vanity. It's often rooted in childhood experiences where they felt overlooked or unexceptional. These individuals will often showcase their achievements, not because they're arrogant, but because they're constantly seeking confirmation that they matter. You can spot these people easily. They tell stories where they're the hero. They mention their successes, sometimes repeatedly. They might name drop or reference impressive experiences. They seek leadership positions and like to have the final say in group decisions. Here's where most people go wrong. They either try to compete with this person or they offer shallow compliments that feel transparent. Neither works. What does work is something I call elevation through inquiry. Instead of saying, "Wow, you're so successful," which they've heard 1,000 times, you create moments where they feel intellectually or experientially superior. You ask them for advice on something they're knowledgeable about. You present a problem and let them solve it. You acknowledge their expertise by positioning yourself as the student and them as the teacher. But here's the advanced technique. You validate them through third-party recognition. Instead of praising them directly, you mention how someone else spoke highly of them. You know, Marcus mentioned, "You're the person to talk to about this," carries infinitely more weight than, "You're really good at this." Why? Because direct compliments can feel like flattery, but third-party validation feels like reputation. It suggests their significance extends beyond just your perception. It means others see it too. This fulfills their need at a much deeper level.
Need 2. The fear of inadequacy. While the first group fears being insignificant, this group fears being insufficient. These are people with big dreams who worry they won't achieve them. They might be pursuing difficult goals, competing in challenging fields, or trying to prove themselves in new areas. You'll recognize them by how they talk about their aspirations. There's excitement, yes, but there's also underlying anxiety. They might downplay their achievements even as they work toward them. They'll express doubts disguised as realistic concerns. "I'm working toward this, but the competition is intense." Or, "I hope I can pull this off." Most people respond to this with generic encouragement. "You've got this," or "just believe in yourself." These phrases are well-intentioned, but psychologically useless. They're too vague to penetrate the specific fears this person carries. What actually works is what I call evidence-based reassurance. You don't just tell them they'll succeed, you give them concrete reasons why success is likely. You tell them stories of others who started from similar or worse positions and achieved what they're pursuing. You draw parallels between their current struggles and the struggles of people who eventually succeeded. But here's the key. Make it specific, Don't just say, lots of people succeed at this. Say, my former roommate was in your exact position 2 years ago. He felt completely overwhelmed by the same challenges you're facing. He thought he wasn't good enough. Now he's thriving in that field. When I watch you work, I see the same dedication he had, honestly, maybe even more. You're not just offering hope, you're providing a framework that allows their brain to construct a believable path to success. This is what quiets their fear of inadequacy. Need 3. The weight of past wounds. This one requires more sensitivity because you're dealing with actual psychological pain. Some people carry wounds from past experiences that continue to affect how they see themselves. These might be rejections, failures, betrayals, or any experience that left them feeling fundamentally flawed. The tricky part about wounds is that people rarely announce them directly. Instead, they reveal themselves through subtle comments, self-deprecating humor, or defensive reactions to certain topics. Someone might casually mention a past rejection, but then insist it doesn't bother them, while their emotional signature says otherwise. With wounds, your role isn't to be a therapist, it's to be a perspective shifter. Most wounds persist because the person has constructed a narrative where they were at fault or fundamentally lacking. Your job is to offer an alternative narrative that's equally valid but more empowering. Let's say someone mentions they were rejected in a past relationship, and you notice it still affects them. The common response is, their loss, or you're better off without them. These don't work because they're dismissive rather than reconstructive. Instead, you might share information that reframes the entire situation. You know, I actually know someone who dated her before. She apparently had a pattern of pushing away people who actually cared about her because she was still hung up on an ex. Several guys went through the same thing with her. You're not insulting anyone, you're providing context that removes the personal sting. You're showing them that what felt like a judgment on their worth was actually about circumstances beyond their control. This allows them to release the wound without feeling like they're making excuses. Need 4, the desire for connection and understanding. This last need is perhaps the most universal, but also the most misunderstood. Everyone wants to feel truly seen and understood. But here's what most people miss. Feeling understood doesn't come from someone agreeing with you. It comes from someone demonstrating they've genuinely absorbed your perspective. People with this dominant need will often share personal thoughts, feelings, or experiences that go beneath surface-level conversation. They're not necessarily looking for solutions or even responses. They're looking for witness. They want confirmation that their internal experience has been received and validated by another human being. The mistake most people make is immediately relating everything back to themselves. Oh, I know exactly what you mean. And suddenly the conversation is about you, not them. Or worse, they immediately try to fix the problem or challenge the person's feelings. The skill here is reflective listening. You listen deeply, then you mirror back what you heard in a way that shows you understood not just the words, but the emotion beneath them. It sounds like you're feeling frustrated, not just because of what happened, but because it made you question whether you're on the right path at all. When someone hears their internal experience accurately reflected back to them, something powerful happens. They feel less alone. They feel validated. And crucially, they associate that feeling of being understood with you specifically. You become the person who gets them in a way that others don't. The principle of psychological withdrawal. Here's something fascinating that most people never realize. The power of these techniques doesn't come just from what you do in the moment. It comes from what happens after you leave. Think about it this way. When you fulfill someone's psychological need, you create a moment of relief, satisfaction, or joy. Their brain experiences a positive chemical response. But here's the critical part. That feeling doesn't last forever. Eventually, it fades, and they return to their baseline state where that need exists again. And when that need resurfaces, what does their brain do? It associates the feeling of fulfillment with you. Their subconscious mind says, I felt good when I was with that person. I want to experience that again. This is why they start seeking you out without fully understanding why. They just know that talking to you leaves them feeling better than talking to others. This is the difference between forced connection and natural magnetism. You're not chasing people or trying to convince them to like you. Instead, you're creating psychological experiences that naturally draw them back to you. The ethics of influence. Before we wrap up, I want to address something important. Everything I've taught you today can be used to build beautiful, authentic relationships where both people benefit, or it can be used to manipulate people for selfish gain. The difference lies entirely in your intention and your reciprocity. Are you fulfilling people's needs because you genuinely want to add value to their lives, or are you doing it to build relationships, but always ensure the other person benefits as much or more than you do? Don't fulfill someone's need for significance just to get them to do you favors. Do it because you recognize they have real value that deserves to be acknowledged. The most magnetic people aren't those who are best at manipulating others. They're people who are genuinely skilled at recognizing and appreciating what makes each person unique. They make others feel seen, valued, and understood, not as a tactic, but as a way of moving through the world. So, let me give you a practical framework for implementing everything we've discussed today. The next time you're in a conversation, follow these steps. First, establish their baseline. Notice their normal energy, tone, and engagement level. This gives you a reference point for detecting emotional signatures. Second, watch for deviations. When do they light up? When do they become more animated or more withdrawn? What topics trigger these shifts? Third, identify the underlying need. Is it significance? Is it reassurance? Is it validation? Is it understanding? Fourth, fulfill that need authentically. Use the specific techniques we discussed for each type of need, but always do it in a way that feels genuine to who you are. Fifth, create space. Don't overwhelm them with constant validation. Let them experience the contrast between feeling fulfilled when they're with you and craving that fulfillment when you're apart. Remember, becoming magnetic isn't about being someone you're not. It's about becoming more skilled at recognizing what others need and more generous in providing it. The most unforgettable people aren't necessarily the most talented or attractive. They're simply the ones who make others feel most alive. So go out there and practice. Pay attention. Notice the emotional signatures around you. Identify the needs others carry and fulfill them genuinely. You'll be amazed at how quickly you transform from someone people enjoy to someone they can't stop thinking about. And if you found this valuable, remember to like this video and subscribe for more psychology-backed insights that can change how you connect with everyone around you. I'll see you in the next one.